the scenes and where are things headed? We are decoding that in just a bit. Also on the show for you, telling you how India's air superiority forced Pakistan to seek a ceasefire during Operation Sindoor. Also getting to the key takeaways from the India-EU trade deal. All this and more coming up. Our top focus tonight, the latest coming in from West Asia, a major escalation and what seems to be a sudden softening in the tense standoff between the US and Iran has kept the world on edge as an American aircraft carrier strike group has entered the region. Let's just break down for you what's really happening. First, the military backdrop. The United States has deployed the USS Abraham Lincoln aircraft carrier along with 3 accompanying warships into the West Asian waters. And according to the US Central Command, this strike group is there to promote regional security and stability. Now enter Donald Trump's rather surprising shift in rhetoric. Just days ago, Trump was threatening military strikes against Iran, citing the violent crackdown on protesters as the prime reason. But that hard line seems to have softened now. Trump says Iran has signaled it wants to make a deal. 2 key factors here, perhaps related to what's happening. First, Iran communicated that some planned executions of detained protesters had been halted reportedly. This was seen as a major development given international outrage over the death sentences against the demonstrators as reported. Second, US intelligence assessment suggesting that a military attack might not actually help the protest movement and could even undermine the goal of regime change by rallying nationalist support around the Iranian regime. In other words, strikes could backfire. Proxy groups have also weighed in, backing Iran in its hour of crisis. Hezbollah and the Houthis both reportedly now warning America against any military move. Lebanon's Hezbollah organized a massive solidarity rally in Beirut to voice its support for Khamenei. The group warning any miscalculation can trigger wider regional escalation. There has also been regional response from one of Iran's neighbors. UAE, which is a key US partner in the Gulf, has made its position very clear. In fact, the UAE is saying it will not allow its airspace, territory or waters to be used for any military action against Iran. That means no airspace, no bases, no logistical support. In its statement, the UAE emphasized that dialogue, de-escalation, respect for international law and state sovereignty are the best ways to handle the crisis. Naturally, there is the economic and financial pressure from Washington as well. The US is tightening the screws on Iran. The US State Department, in fact, is offering up to $15 million for information leading to individuals or entities involved in illegal Iranian oil sales. And their target is the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, IRGC, reportedly. Washington says the IRGC funds what it calls terrorist activities through sanctioned oil sales, smuggling and illegal financial networks. And at the heart of the latest crisis between the two sides is the protests in Iran that started out in late December. sparked by rampant inflation, economic pain, very quickly spiraling into a mass movement on the ground against the regime. Rights groups accused the Iranian security forces of shooting directly at protesters and doing so under the cover of internet shutdowns, making it hard for the world to see what was happening. The crackdown has drawn sharp international condemnation, especially from Washington. But then why is Trump all the way out to isolate Iran from all fronts? Trump's history with Iran, of course, is the answer here. In June 2025, remember, Trump ordered strikes on 3 Iranian nuclear facilities during a 12-day war between Iran and Israel. And this was part of a long-standing hardline approach. And during his first term, Trump withdrew U.S. from the Iran nuclear deal, an agreement brokered under President Barack Obama that basically offered Iran sanctions relief in exchange for nuclear inspections. And that decision and the later military action sparked backlash, not just from Democrats, but also from some members of his own Republican Party. But then where does all of this leave us tonight? The carrier group in West Asia, Iran under intense economic and political pressure, regional allies calling for de-escalation, Trump talking tough but then also leaving the door open for a deal. So is the edge of a wider conflict? Is that what's happening, or is this the beginning of a truce? A powerful international assessment has reinforced India's position on Operation Sindoor and underscored how the Indian Air Force shaped the outcome of last year's 4-day air conflict with Pakistan. A Swiss military think tank in its report has said India achieved clear air superiority, crippled Pakistan's defenses, and forced Islamabad to seek a ceasefire by May 10, 2025. The detailed study by the Switzerland-based Center for Military History and Perspective Studies says the Indian Air Force dominated large sections of Pakistani airspace during the 88-hour operation. And the study concludes that Indian fighters and strike aircraft operated with near total freedom, while the Pakistan Air Force lost the capacity to launch meaningful counterattacks. Now, the report, authored by military historian, further stating that by the morning of May 10, the Indian Air Force had dismantled key elements of Pakistan's air defense network. Indian strikes hit major Pakistani air bases and radar sites, leaving enemy aircraft exposed and grounded. And the report says this dominance allowed India to conduct long-range precision strikes at will as advanced munitions, such as BrahMos, remained available. And the study confirming that Indian strikes targeted terror infrastructure, including Jaish-e-Mohammed's headquarters in Bahawalpur and Lashkar-e-Toiba's base in Muridke. The Swiss report also stating that over 4 days, Indian air defenses destroyed more than half of Pakistan's drones, while electronic warfare systems jamming played a key role. The report says Pakistan lost its ability to repeat attacks after losing radars and facing the threat of India's S-400 missile systems. And it concludes that by degrading Pakistan air defenses and striking major Air Force stations, India compelled Islamabad to ask for a ceasefire, even as the Swiss report and India's repeated evidence-led proof clearly outline India's dominance during the Operation Sindoor. Pakistan is continuing with its baseless narratives. At the United Nations Security Council, after Pakistan's envoy claimed there could be no new normal based on coercion, India responded sharply. India's permanent representative there accused Islamabad of diverting attention from cross-border terrorism. Listen to this.
It is not normal to tolerate Pakistan's continued use of terrorism as an instrument of state policy. This hallowed chamber cannot become a forum for Pakistan to legitimize terrorism.
The Indian ambassador warned that the United Nations must not become a platform to legitimize extremism. And while referring to the April 22nd Pahalgam terror attack, he said India's response remained restrained and calibrated, aimed at dismantling terror infrastructure in Pakistan and Pakistan-occupied Kashmir. Tariffs have become a go-to tool of geopolitical coercion, it seems, for US President Donald Trump. While New Delhi is grappling with the tariffs imposed, even Europe is not immune when it comes to Trump's threats. India and the European Union have decided to take steps towards a new global order in a way by sealing a landmark free trade agreement. Let's break this down for you. As a result, tariffs on more than 90% of EU goods entering India will be eliminated or reduced. That's not all. Optical, medical, and surgical equipment, along with European wine and beer, will get cheaper. The combined strength of India and EU cannot be understated, of course. Together, they make up nearly 25% of the global GDP and account for 1/3 of global trade. While the EU is already India's largest trading partner in goods, with bilateral trade reaching $219 billion in 2024 to 25, a free trade deal had been elusive so far. With roadblocks over market access and regulatory demands, Prime Minister Modi hailed it as a blueprint for shared prosperity. Ursula von der Leyen was also talking about the deal, stressing that a market of 2 billion people is being created, adding that this was a win-win partnership.
यह एफटीए भारत और यूरोपियन यूनियन के बीच इन्वेस्टमेंट को बूस्ट करेगा, नई इनोवेशन पार्टनरशिप बनाएगा और वैश्विक स्तर पर सप्लाई चेन को मजबूत करेगा। यानी यह सिर्फ ट्रेड एग्रीमेंट नहीं है, यह साझा समृद्धि का नया ब्लूप्रिंट है।
Now let's also take a look at how India benefits. This deal is set to boost Indian exports to the tune of over 6 trillion rupees. Engineering goods will now gain preferential access in the EU. The jewelry sector also stands to gain with duty-free access to the EU market. Tariffs on leather and footwear will also be eliminated. As per India's Commerce and Industry Minister, up to 7 million jobs are likely to be created in the textile sector alone, as EU has decided to grant zero duty access to Indian textiles. On the whole, duties shall be eliminated on more than 90% of the country's exports to the EU. And this is a win-win deal for the EU as well, as the European bloc's goods exports to India set to double by 2032. Moreover, tariffs on a majority of EU goods will be either eliminated or reduced. For instance, tariffs on wines will be gradually reduced from the current rate of 150% to 20%, thus making it cheaper. On the other hand, tariffs on olive oil will be abolished. Additionally, there will be a massive reduction in the tariffs on EU's cars. European bloc's bakery products will also see elimination of tariffs. Most importantly, EU firms will get privileged access to India's services market. And speaking to WION, India's Commerce and Industry Minister expressed hope that the FTA will come into force this year itself. The draft text of the deal will be signed by both sides after it is adopted by the European Council. Listen to this.
See this FTA being implemented, any timeline, because it has to go through a legal scrubbing through the parliament as well.
We do hope that we should be able to celebrate the entry into force of this agreement within calendar 2026 itself.
In fact, the deal also assumes significance in the context of Europe's growing unease over Trump's stance on the Greenland issue. He, remember, threatened an additional 25% tariff on multiple European allies for opposing his quest to take over Greenland. And the US president also stood alienated in a way when most European nations refrained from joining his Gaza Board of Peace. But the question still is, how will Trump respond to all of this, and whether India and EU can actually mount a decisive challenge to America's moves as of now. And before we go on any further, here's a look at what else is lined up for you on the show tonight. Could high-temperature superconductors be potential game changers? We tell you what China's major push in that sector is all about. A shocking report says foreign spies may have been listening while British Prime Ministers held crucial discussions. We'll be decoding that for you in just a bit. China has just released a major new scientific report, and if true, it could have large implications for technology, energy, even geopolitics. This week, the Chinese Academy of Sciences published what it calls the world's first strategic roadmap for developing high-temperature superconducting materials. In simple terms, it's a long-term plan for how China basically wants to turn advanced lab science into real-world technology. But what exactly does that mean? First, what are superconductors and why does all of this matter? Superconductors, as many of you may know, are special materials that can carry electricity with almost no loss, unlike normal wires, where energy is wasted as heat. Superconductors allow power to flow freely, which means faster trains, stronger medical scanners, and also more efficient power grids, even progress towards nuclear fusion. All of that being the implications. But then for decades now, the problem has been temperature. Traditional superconductors only work at extremely cold levels, close to absolute zero. Keeping them that cold requires expensive cooling systems and also rare helium. And that is why until now, superconductors have mostly been limited to places like MRI machines, scientific labs. China's new report focuses on something different. It focuses on so-called high-temperature superconductors. Just to be clear here, these materials still need to be cold, but not nearly as cold. In other words, they can operate using liquid nitrogen, which is much cheaper and easier to produce. And that makes large-scale use far more realistic. As per China's report, China's plan is a material which is rare earth barium copper oxide. Since 2006, China and other countries have been producing it commercially in thin tape form. These tapes can carry enormous amounts of electricity and withstand strong magnetic fields as well. According to the report, it could play a major role in two key areas: power systems and advanced magnets. In power systems, these materials could help build ultra-efficient electricity grids, cutting waste and improving energy security. And in magnets, they are crucial for technologies like nuclear fusion reactors and high-end medical equipment. In other words, this is not just about science, it's about the future infrastructure as well. But the report also makes it clear that China is not there yet. Researchers identified obstacles like lowering production costs, manufacturing, and making the materials more stable in real-world conditions. But why is China putting so much emphasis on this now? A part of the answer is purely economic. Advanced materials like superconductors are seen as foundational technologies. They are important for many industries, from clean energy to transport to even AI infrastructure. Countries that lead in these areas gain long-term advantages naturally, and part of it is also strategic here. The United States, Europe, Japan, China are all competing when it comes to advanced technology fields. We've been telling you about this. From semiconductors to batteries to quantum computing as well, control over critical materials has become a geopolitical issue. Even India is part of that race, of course. India's semiconductor mission was launched in 2021 with a total financial outlay of 76,000 crore rupees. Its aim is to provide financial support to companies investing in semiconductors. India and every big economy realizes that superconductors are the next frontier at the heart of modern economics, which then brings us back to today. By releasing this roadmap, China is trying to tell the world that it wants to lead and not follow in this next generation of energy and research technology. It's quite similar to what we have seen in EVs, for example, solar panels, where China invested early and scaled quickly and was able to build global competitiveness. So if China succeeds, it means the reshaping of entire industries, from power transmission to high-speed transport. It could also accelerate China's work on nuclear fusion, a potential future source of near-limitless clean energy. Even though challenges remain, this new report shows that China is thinking long-term rather than focusing only on short-term products, and other countries will be watching this very closely. Moving on, Russia hammering Ukraine into its darkest winter in a way. 6 people dead, about 23 people injured in the latest Russian attacks. As Putin grabs 500 square kilometers, Kiev in a way begging for $27 billion in weapons aid. At this crucial juncture, Europe, is it slamming the brakes on arms aid? And France blocking supply of Storm Shadow missiles, while Germany says it can no longer supply Patriot air defense systems. What does all of this mean for Ukraine? Take a look.
The lights are going out across Ukraine as a brutal winter turns into a weapon of war. Massive Russian strikes have just crippled the energy grid in Kharkiv and Odessa, leaving millions without heat or water in sub-zero temperatures. The situation is equally grim in the Ukrainian capital.
We don't have heating right now, but we're holding on. We have electricity, we're managing somehow, and we also have gas as backup. Yes, it was a very difficult evening. 3 missiles struck the industrial district of Kharkiv. It was an energy facility that supplied the city of Kharkiv. It was seriously damaged. We are all working now. In addition, a lyceum was damaged. 16 multi-story buildings were also damaged.
On the ground, the situation is even more dire. Moscow says its forces have advanced across all frontline sectors, capturing nearly 500 square kilometers of territory since early January.
The troops of the joint grouping continue to advance on all axes. Since the start of January, 17 settlements have been liberated and more than 500 square kilometers of territory have come under our control.
Whether fully verifiable or not, the pressure is visible. Ukrainian troops are stretched, ammunition is rationed, air defenses are thin. The numbers tell a stark story. Ukraine needs at least $27 billion in military equipment in 2026. And crucially, from outside the European Union. European stockpiles are depleted, production is slow, and political unity is fraying. France is now openly drawing lines. President Emmanuel Macron says Europe must protect itself first before sending more missiles east. Paris has opposed an EU proposal to buy British-made Storm Shadow missiles for Ukraine. French officials argue that the funds should be used to strengthen Europe's own defense industry. That's not all. Germany has no remaining capacity to provide Ukraine with additional Patriot systems. That stance has consequences. Ukraine relies on long-range precision weapons to hit Russian supply lines and command hubs. Also, without the Patriot missile defense systems, Ukraine is defenseless against Russian aerial assaults. As Europe debates budgets and borders, missiles keep flying, and Kyiv is left asking a brutal question. How long can it hold if the help slows down now? Bureau Report, WION, World is One.
As Europe scrambles to rearm for future conflicts, the US is locked in a great power rivalry with China, with the battle for influence playing out at sea. Just days after China sent a naval vessel to Latin America on a so-called medical mission, the US has responded by sending a warship to a China-funded naval base in the South China Sea region. A signal from Washington. Both Washington and Beijing, it seems, are eager to test each other in what each considers as their area of influence. Cambodia's naval base, which is located near the disputed South China Sea and which was upgraded with Chinese funding just last year, has hosted a US warship for the first time. The USS Cincinnati is an independence variant littoral combat ship. It is designed for shallow waters and coastal operations. They are basically built for speed, agility, and rapid response, and they are increasingly central to America's Indo-Pacific strategy. The crew of USS Cincinnati is about 100, and it is scheduled to engage in sporting events and other activities in a nearby city during its visit till the 28th of January. The completion of a new pier and dry dock has fueled concerns in Washington that China, which is Cambodia's close ally and main provider of aid and investment, may have been granted exclusive access to the base. Since 2019, controversy has also persisted over reports of a potential 30-year agreement for Chinese military use of the site on the Gulf of Thailand. Although China has funded Cambodia's base's expansion, the Cambodian government has denied any agreement for exclusive Chinese privileges. And the Prime Minister, who oversaw the base's reopening in April last year, has maintained that it is open to all friendly nations for joint exercises, provided the ships are not too large for the facility. Last Saturday itself, when the U.S. ship reached the port, the U.S. Navy said in a press release that USS Cincinnati's visit to Cambodia reaffirms shared commitment to regional security, peace, and prosperity. The U.S. Navy said that its crew, while in port, will conduct ship tours and meet with key leaders. The U.S. Navy captain, the Commodore of the destroyer Squadron 7, said, and I'm quoting now, "We are always excited to work alongside our partners and continue to build a free and open Indo-Pacific for all nations." The U.S. Navy ship's visit also coinciding with a scheduled meeting between the head of the U.S. Indo-Pacific Command and the Cambodian Defense Minister. And here's why this port visit matters all the more. Last April, the naval base was inaugurated after being renovated by China. It was opened as a joint logistics and training facility operated by Chinese and Cambodian forces. It became China's second publicly acknowledged overseas military base. Beijing insists that the facility is not aimed at any third country. Meanwhile, Cambodia maintains that the base remains under full Cambodian control. But then analysts are not entirely convinced. China's growing military footprint in Cambodia, strengthening China's ability to project power across the South China Sea, a region already riddled with territorial disputes and frequent maritime confrontations. Meanwhile, the US continuing to maintain its presence to assert freedom of navigation and counter China's expanding reach. The visit also marking the second US littoral combat ship deployment to Cambodia since December 2024, when the USS Savannah docked there, a sign of strengthening ties. Cambodian officials say the port remains open to all foreign vessels, including those from the US, Japan and Australia. Japan, in fact, was the first to visit the upgraded base last year. Japanese vessels from the Japanese Maritime Self-Defense Force made the port call in April 2025. And then China followed soon after with joint military drills. According to the Pentagon, Chinese naval vessels were already being rotated through the base even before the facility officially opened. Pentagon claims that China is building a global network of military hubs to project power far beyond its borders. So what happens next is the immediate question. How will China respond, and will Cambodia's base become another frontline in this great power rivalry between the US and China? We will have to wait and watch for these answers. Gold is shining brighter than ever. Like we told you yesterday, prices have crossed $5,000 an ounce for the first time because of global tensions and economic uncertainty. And while that may worry some, for others, the situation has turned into a literal gold mine of opportunity. In South Africa, one of the countries most closely linked to gold, a gold boom is bringing abandoned mining sites back to life. Just outside Johannesburg, in fact, a patch of land once controlled by illegal miners, known locally as Zamazamas, has been turned into the country's first major new underground gold mine in more than 15 years. Not long ago, people there were digging with hammers, crawling through the narrow tunnels in dangerous conditions. And today, workers are wearing hard hats, carrying oxygen devices and using modern drilling equipment. Around $100 million has been invested in the project reportedly. And at today's prices, the gold beneath there could be worth more than $4.5 billion. So what's driving this rush? Over the past 2 years, gold prices have more than doubled. Wars, politics, high debt levels, fears about inflation, all of that pushed investors towards assets seen as safe, assets like gold, which remains at the top of that list. Central banks, including in China, India, other markets, have also been buying large amounts of gold in order to reduce dependence on the US dollar. What's the result then? A global mining revival. Exploration budgets rose 11% in 2025. Major producers in Africa, North America, Australia are reopening old mines and fast-tracking new projects. But in South Africa, this turnaround is especially visible. You see, for much of the 20th century, the country was the world's largest gold producer. Nearly half of all gold ever mined came from there. But over the past 2 decades, production has nearly collapsed. Deep mines became expensive and also dangerous. And on top of all of that, labor disputes, power shortages, rising wages reportedly scared away investors. By 2024, South Africa had fallen to the 12th place globally. Many projects simply could not attract funding. And this area was one of them. Its owners struggled for years to raise money. Investors saw South African mining as too risky. And that changed only when gold prices started increasing. Suddenly, banks and international financiers were willing to take another look. Unlike older mines that stretch miles underground, this one is relatively shallow. It uses modern water-based drilling technology and costs less to operate. Its break-even price is far below today's market levels, making it profitable even if the prices fall. Still, reports say there are several challenges. And now this industry faces shortages of skilled workers. Equipment suppliers are reportedly overwhelmed, and safety risks in underground mining remain high. Just to be clear here, production from just this mine will not transform the industry on its own. The mine is expected to produce about 6,000 ounces this year, rising to 70,000 annually by the end of the decade. And this shows that investors are willing to return if prices stay high. Other companies, in fact, are already expanding deeper mines and considering reopening closed sites. But what does this mean globally then? Gold's rally reflects deeper anxieties about the world economy. Trade tensions, wars, financial instability around the world are pushing governments and investors towards hard assets. And for countries like South Africa, that anxiety is also creating opportunity. Jobs are returning, infrastructure is being rebuilt, and a sector that was once seen in decline is finding new life. Again, if prices fall, investment could dry up again. But for now, it's a gold rush for gold miners. Britain has quietly repatriated several Islamic State-linked women and children who were held in Syria, including some who were detained alongside Shamima Begum. According to officials at the camp, which is run by the Kurdish-led Syrian Democratic Forces, 6 British women and 9 children have been sent back to the UK reportedly in recent years without public announcements. A total of 29 women and children with current or former British passports remain in the camp near the Iraqi border reportedly. Shamima Begum, remember, left that part in East London in 2015 at the age of 15 to join ISIS. She had her British citizenship stripped and was barred from returning after she was found in detention in 2019. The same policy was later applied to other women after the fall of ISIS' final territory. The 2 other schoolgirls who travelled with Begum are believed to have died during the fighting. While the UK government says its policy has not changed really, a small number of women have been allowed to return with their children on a case-by-case basis. Most of those repatriated were under the age of 18 when they travelled to Syria. Unaccompanied minors were previously allowed to return and were placed with social services, but children who remained with their mothers were kept in the camps. A report last November suggested that 3 adult women and 18 children had been brought back, though only 2 cases were publicly confirmed. Now, it's understood that 2 more families returned in 2024 and 2025. The repatriations come as the security situation in Syria worsens. The Syrian military has moved to end Kurdish control in the northeast, taking over camps and triggering riots, fires, escapes. At a camp where tens of thousands once lived, women and children were left in chaotic conditions as Kurdish forces withdrew, with camps now at risk of collapse and the United States considering a withdrawal from Syria. Experts are warning that the fate of the remaining ISIS prisoners and their families is more uncertain than ever. As tensions rise with China and the Taiwan Strait growing more volatile, Tokyo seems to be no longer content in relying only on American firepower. According to reports, Japan wants its own long-range strike missile, a homegrown missile similar to the US Tomahawk. Recently, Kawasaki Industries revealed a prototype cruise missile designed to test the technologies behind a future Japanese strike weapon, the results of which have now appeared on the website of Japan's Defense Procurement Agency. The project aims to build a flexible missile platform that can carry different warheads and missions. Like Tomahawks, engineers designed it to hit ships and land targets, jam enemy radars, and even punch through hardened bunkers and command centers. The propulsion system gives the missile a range beyond 1,000 kilometers. Japanese defense officials say the final weapon could fly twice as far as Japan's current long-range missiles, striking targets as far as 2,500 kilometers away. Despite weighing only 90 kilograms, the engine delivers powerful thrust and high subsonic speed. The current prototype, though, will never enter service. It exists to prove technology and pave the way for the final missile designed on Tomahawks. But the goal is pretty clear. Since late 2024, Japan has started building a national cruise missile to reduce dependence on American Tomahawks. The Defense Ministry expects a deployable weapon sometime between 2030 and 2033. And this push comes as regional tensions sharpen. China, remember, has issued travel warnings for its citizens visiting Japan, citing safety concerns and rising crime. Beijing has repeated those advisories since Japanese leaders warned that a Chinese attack on Taiwan could trigger a response from Tokyo. And at sea, the pressure continues. Japan now urging its fishermen to avoid the disputed Senkaku Islands, where Chinese Coast Guard ships patrol contested waters. As Japan prepares for a more dangerous neighborhood, it's clear now that it wants its own long-range weapon forged at home. For years now, while British Prime Ministers debated wars, trade, national security, foreign spies may have been listening secretly, silently, from thousands of miles away at the very heart of British power. According to a Telegraph report, Chinese state-linked hackers penetrated the mobile phones of senior officials inside Downing Street, potentially tracking private calls, confidential messages, the movements of top aides, in what could be one of the biggest cyber intrusions ever uncovered inside the UK government. The cyber attacks reportedly targeted phones belonging to some of the closest advisors to former British Prime Ministers Boris Johnson, Rishi Sunak, Liz Truss between 2021 and 2024. Officials did not confirm whether the Prime Minister's own phones were compromised, but security agencies warned the hackers may have read messages, intercepted calls, collected data, revealing who senior figures contacted, how often they spoke, and where they traveled. The operation reportedly formed part of a vast Chinese espionage campaign, known to Western intelligence agencies as Salt Typhoon. The same network allegedly infiltrated telecommunication systems across several countries, including the US, Australia, Canada, New Zealand. Investigators reportedly uncovered the breach only last year after American agencies revealed that Beijing-linked hacking groups had accessed telecom networks around the world. And the timing now also raises urgent concerns. UK Prime Minister reportedly headed for China. He will be the first British leader to visit Beijing in 6 years, seeking new trade and investment ties. And his trip follows the Labour government's decision to approve a Chinese mega embassy in London, remember, a move that has already triggered protests and security warnings. US intelligence sources say the Chinese espionage operation is ongoing, raising the possibility that Starmer and members of his senior team may also have been exposed. In fact, last November, MI5 issued a formal espionage alert to the British Parliament, warning lawmakers about growing cyber threats linked to the Chinese state. The Telegraph report, in fact, claims that there were repeated attempts to breach the phones of Downing Street staff, particularly during Rishi Sunak's time in office. The full scale of the damage remains unknown. Investigators reportedly still do not know the extent to which the hackers obtained information or how widely it may have been, or how widely it may have circulated inside foreign intelligence agencies. There have been several high-profile Chinese-linked espionage cases in the past, of course. Last year, a Taipei court, remember, convicted 4 Taiwanese soldiers, including 3 assigned to guard the presidential office building and 1 from the defense ministry, for selling confidential military information to Chinese intelligence. In 2019, Australia launched investigations in a plot to plant a Chinese spy in Canberra's parliament. In 2018, reports claiming that the African Union's headquarters in Ethiopia, built and funded by China, allegedly bugged by Beijing. The British government has reportedly declined to comment on the latest allegations, while China's embassy has denied the allegations, calling China a victim of cyber espionage and rejecting claims of state involvement as politically motivated and unsupported by evidence. But the key question remains unanswered. For how long did a foreign power allegedly quietly watch the inner workings of the British government? An outbreak of the deadly Nipah virus in West Bengal is raising alarm across Asia, with several countries stepping up health screening measures. At least 5 confirmed cases have been reported, all linked to a private hospital. Among the infected are healthcare workers, including 2 nurses currently in intensive care reportedly. 1 remains in very critical condition. According to the state health officials, more than 100 contacts have been quarantined as the authorities race to contain the spread. Let's break this down further. The Nipah virus was first identified during an outbreak in Malaysia in 1998. It's a highly fatal zoonotic disease transmitted from animals like fruit bats and pigs to humans. And in some cases, it is from person to person. It has a mortality rate ranging from 40% to 75%, with no approved vaccine or treatment. The World Health Organization has described Nipah in its top 10 priority diseases, along with pathogens like COVID-19 and Zika. This is mainly because of its potential to trigger an epidemic. And the incubation period ranges from 4 to 14 days. People who contract the virus show a wide range of symptoms or sometimes none at all. Initial symptoms may include fever, headaches, muscle pain, vomiting, sore throat. In some people, these may be followed by drowsiness, altered consciousness, pneumonia, brain inflammation. In response, countries including Thailand, Nepal, and Taiwan have introduced or proposed stricter screening and surveillance measures. No cases have been reported outside India. Authorities say vigilance, early detection, and public awareness remain key as the situation continues to develop. There is public concern in China ahead of the Lunar New Year holiday when millions will be traveling. The Chinese health experts are saying it is difficult to transmit and less likely to cause an outbreak in China. Scientists have created the most detailed map ever made of dark matter using data from the James Webb Space Telescope. The findings offer new insight into the hidden forces shaping galaxies and help explain how dark matter made life in the universe possible. Take a look.
It holds galaxies together. It is everywhere, and yet it has never been seen. It shapes the universe, yet emits no light. At first glance, it looks like a field of faint blue glimmers floating in the dark, scattered like ghostly lights across the night sky. But this image is not a photograph of visible stars or galaxies. It's a map of something entirely invisible: dark matter. Dark matter doesn't emit, reflect, or absorb light, but it does have mass, and that means it exerts gravity.
We created the most detailed ever made map of dark matter for a small patch of the universe. So dark matter is this invisible architect of the universe. And even if it's invisible, we can observe it indirectly through the effect it has on the stars in the background, and in particular, its gravity.
Dark matter makes up nearly 85% of all matter in the universe. Without it, galaxies would tear themselves apart, stars would drift, cosmic structure would collapse, and for decades, scientists could only infer its presence through gravity, motion, and mathematical fingerprints. Now that is changing. Using the James Webb Space Telescope, astronomers have produced the most detailed map yet of dark matter's distribution across the universe.
The James Webb Space Telescope is, it's huge, it's in space, but it's basically just a camera. It can take photos of the night sky, like you can from your own mobile phone. But it's got this huge lens on it, so it can collect the light from the most distant objects at the far side of the universe. So we can see objects really far away from us, and the resolution on it is just astonishing.
Understanding dark matter is key to understanding the universe's past and its future. It could help explain why galaxies formed when they did, why they look the way they do, and why the universe continues to expand the way it does. Although this map focuses on a single section of the sky, it reveals a pattern that stretches across the universe, that links invisible matter to the galaxies and stars we can see, and even to the conditions that made life possible. For the first time, humanity is not just sensing the universe's invisible skeleton, it is mapping it. Bureau Report, WION, World is One.
Is there a link between menopause and changes in the brain? According to a new study, menopause is linked to changes in the brain similar to those seen in Alzheimer's. According to new research from the University of Cambridge, menopause is linked to reductions in grey matter volume in key brain regions and increased levels of anxiety, depression, and difficulties with sleep. Let's just break this down further for you. Menopause, as you must be aware, is when periods stop due to lower hormone levels. The age group typically is between the ages of 45 and 55. To counter the effects of menopause, particularly depressive symptoms and sleep problems, many women are prescribed what's called hormone replacement therapy, HRT. Menopause has previously been linked to cognitive decline like memory, attention, language deficits. The study was published in Psychological Medicine. The research was funded by the Wellcome Trust with additional support from the National Institute for Health and Care Research, Cambridge Biomedical Research Centre. Researchers speculate the loss of grey matter in areas involved with memory and emotion might partly explain why women are generally at greater risk of dementia than men. Although women in the HRT group had greater anxiety and depression compared to the non-HRT group, further analysis showed that these differences in symptoms were already present before menopause. Women post-menopause were more likely to report insomnia, get less sleep, and feel tired. Menopause also appeared to have an impact on cognition. Postmenopausal women who were not on HRT have slower reaction times than those yet to start menopause or who were on HRT. The brain regions where the differences were seen are the ones that tend to be affected by Alzheimer's disease. And to some extent, this may help explain why we see almost twice as many cases of dementia in women than in men. And these findings are particularly significant. They help in better understanding the impact, the linkages. A healthy lifestyle, exercising, keeping active, eating a healthy diet, for example, are particularly important during menopause, remember, to help mitigate some of its effects. Also, a key takeaway and reminder here is that we all need to be more sensitive, not only to the physical, but also the mental health of women during menopause. And also recognize when they are struggling, and it's important to let others know about the struggle and what they are going through and seek help if required. On that note, it's a wrap on this edition of Gravitas tonight. This is me, Molly Company, signing off. Thanks very much for watching.
India's global voice, the channel that brings you the biggest stories from across the world through India's lens. Now available in more than 190 countries worldwide. Because we believe that the world is one. Watch us in Africa, Europe, USA and Canada, South America, Asia Pacific, Middle East and North African regions. Also available on these digital platforms across the world. WION. World is one.
Where darkness hides behind every corner. Where the truth is stranger than fiction. A show that dives deep into the stories which shock and mystify. Unsolved murders. Psychopaths who defy explanation. International war crimes. And millions swindled in financial fraud. The victims, the accused, and the sinister plot. Crime is your front row seat to darkness.
From the bustling trading floors of Wall Street to the vibrant exchanges of Asian stock markets, WION breaks it down for you to make sense of what's happening, as we reveal the key factors behind events, strategic battles, and the game-changing business decisions that shape the world. We bring you all of this and more on World Business Watch.
Rashtriya Swayamsevak Sangh. To some, it's an extreme ideology. To others, it's the very soul of India. To some, it's rebellion. To others, it's a principle of nation building. Coming soon to challenge perceptions in RSS Centenary Year, Kesariya at 100.
And welcome to a brand new edition of South India, a daily dynamic show that will capture the pulse of southern states.
By blending the special stories, the breaking alerts, and the culture developments as well. From the Himalayas.
From the bustling trading floors of Wall Street to the vibrant exchanges of Asian stock markets, WION breaks it down for you to make sense of what's happening, as we reveal the key factors behind events, strategic battles, and the game-changing business decisions that shape the world. We bring you all of this and more on World Business Watch. WION, India's global voice, the channel that brings you the biggest stories from across the world through India's lens. Now available in more than 190 countries worldwide, because we believe that the world is one. Watch us in Africa, Europe, USA and Canada, South America, Asia Pacific, Middle East and North African regions. Also available on these digital platforms across the world. WION. World is one. From the bustling trading floors of Wall Street to the vibrant exchanges of Asian stock markets,